Economic reasons to understand why Jermall Charlo is not stripped of his belt by the WBC despite his 2 years of inactivity. Among its countless questionable decisions, on many occasions the WBC has been incredibly lax with the mandatory defenses and the inactivity of its world champions. It must be taken into account that if the rankings and eliminator system works well, and sometimes even when it works poorly, the mandatory challenger can be a boxer of a very high level who represents an exceptional challenge for the monarch. In this sense, it should be remembered that boxers like Alexander Usyk, Terence Crawford, Errol Spence, Gennady Golovkin, Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol, etc. were mandatory challengers in one of the organizations before conquering their first world titles. For this reason, the mandatory defenses have been a nuisance for the WBC when the organization intends to keep a champion in his position. On the one hand, it has to pretend that it is a respectable organization and that it prioritizes big fights, so it cannot allow mandatory challengers of a very low level, but on the other hand, the sanctioning body don't want to put certain fighters in danger of losing their crown. That is why the abject solution of the franchise champion was devised. Beyond this repulsive idea, the easiest solution for the WBC is not to order mandatory defenses for years and not even threaten to strip certain inactive champions. Sometimes, the reason behind this type of behavior seems to be in power games, favorable treatment, interests beyond sports, etc. But at other times, the cause is simply the desire to earn more money. To better understand this issue, that is almost never discussed publicly in boxing, let's take the WBC middleweight champion Jermall Charlo as an example, boxer who despite not having defended his title for nearly 2 years, continues to maintain his position. In fact, a few days ago the WBC president Mauricio Suleiman had the audacity to admit that he does not intend to strip Charlo and that the boxer has his full support. Leaving aside the real possibility that there could be a secret understanding between the WBC and PBC, the purely economic reasons show why it is more profitable for the sanctioning body to keep an inactive champion than to allow a new challenger to become titleist and defend his belt. Let's look at the numbers. World champion Jermall Charlo officially declared $1,500,000 as a purse for his last fight. Boxers receive legal payments from their promoters that are not counted as purses. It must be remembered that organizations in general keep 3% of the champion's purse, which is why the WBC extracted $45,000 in just one Charlo fight. If we add to this Charlo's previous purse, which was $1 million, and of which the WBC kept $30,000, that would give us $75,000 for the organization in just 2 bouts. If we look at who is his mandatory challenger, this is the Dominican Carlos Adams, who in his last match, against Montiel with an interim title at stake, earned a purse of $100,000. This means that if Adams replaced Charlo as the WBC World Middleweight Champion, the organization would only earn $3,000 per fight. That is to say, Adams would have to fight 16 bouts for his reign to become more profitable for the WBC than a single defense of Charlo, and 25 fights to equal what the WBC earned with 2 defenses of Charlo. In other words, at an average of 2 fights per year for a normal world champion, Adams would have to reign for 8 years for the WBC to have more profits with him than with Charlo fighting once every 2 years. Logically, if Adams' reign lasted and his level of opposition increased, so would his purses, and the difference would not be so great. But it should be kept in mind that Charlo's potential for earning huge purses is vastly superior to Adams'. If he were to have the best and longest run imaginable, without setbacks, which seems highly unlikely, Adams could eventually be a star in the long run and perhaps his purses would be remarkable. But right now, Charlo would only need to face another of the company's big names for his purse to go well beyond $1,500,000. And a $2 million purse would earn the WBC $60,000, while a $3 million purse would mean $90,000 for the organization, and so on. Lastly, it's important to highlight that right now the WBC extracts percentages from both the purses of the champion Charlo and the interim belt holder Adams, so in this scenario it maximizes its profits and secures money no matter what happens in the future. These numbers clearly show why there are champions who are allowed to be inactive indefinitely, are never ordered to face mandatory defenses, or who receive a special permit so as tailor-made opponents are accepted as the mandatory challengers. Again, the bad practices of the organizations do not have to be carried out with shadow money and shady transactions in tax havens. The public, legal and official characteristics of boxing, if twisted enough, allow the organizations to legally enrich themselves without the risk to end in trial. Although a person can see flagrant corruption in it, Mauricio Suleiman alleges only humanity and the desire to give a chance to Jermall Charlo, who is having a bad time, the president being protected by the rules of his organization which, like in the other sanctioning bodies, ultimately give him the right to make any decision arbitrarily. Thanks for watching. More info, news and videos at our website.